Hello there. Welcome to this presentation of a competitive analysis for Nitrous Holdings LLC, delivered by myself, Ashton Johnson, the solo founder of Nitrous Holdings LLC. Today, we're going to look at some competitors in the, I would say, personal finance or consumer finance market. And we're going to see if there is a place for Nitrous Holdings LLC to try to fit into that market. Look at some of the other bigger players and how they have, kind of roadmap themselves to success, and it has been very successful for them. And we're going to see why I still believe that Nitrous Holdings can either become a new entrant into the market or find some type of way to kind of slip through the cracks, and try to make it to some of those big stage, conversations where either you grab some attention, some headlines, or you just become some type of limited partner with one of those bigger players. So we have a lot to cover today. So let's get to it. Alrighty, so we're going to see if Nitrous Holdings LLC can break into the market. So we have a quick overview here. Today we will uncover some key items in the personal finance market, just some quick data and statistics to understand exactly what problem we're trying to solve. Obviously, competition within that market, potential supply problems or problems as a new entrant. We're going to talk about some key operational problems that may occur, and definitely supply has been a big issue here in 2025 for sure. Some key financial concerns, and then lastly, we're going to conclude with some of the principles from Porter's 5 market forces that pretty much impact any business no matter who you are. So let's go over these concise points here throughout the presentation. Alrighty, so what is the consumer finance market? All right, so we're talking about basically how people spend money in the economy, which is very, very important to the American economy. So just some quick hitter facts, that will actually demonstrate that. The real median household income was about $80,000 in 2023, a 4% increase from 2022. So this is very, very, these are statistics that came from the Census Bureau in 2024. So this is actually very, very good, especially considering we had the pandemic where a lot of people lost their jobs or had to change their careers, including myself. For people to pivot to different careers, a lot of people got into like tech and AI, started to have that big wave generating, or I guess like that first wave of generating, income. People were just looking for different ways to automate and just find different forms of passive income. And so it just forced people to kind of sit at home and just kind of figure out new ways to earn income. All right, so I'm actually happy to see that stat, even though things are probably a little bit more bleak in 2025. Like looking ahead here, and we'll get into the stats. But yeah, I mean, this is actually positive. It was actually positive growth from 2023 until I would say the beginning of 2025. So at least those 2 years. And I did personally, I had some personal issues, definitely, but I did actually partake in that growth, and I can say I had a legitimate shot of taking my company to the next level during those times. But okay, and there is a key but here. There was not a significant change found for the median incomes of really people of color in those households. I would also probably include like a lot of women as well. So it's not just race, but also gender as well. And these are stats that just came out last year from the Census Bureau, right? So you have certain groups of people, wealthy, affluent people that have done well, but you have a lot of other groups that are still just trying to find their footing off of the more tender part of the economy, still coming out of that like pandemic recovery period, right? And it's just been hard. I mean, even for myself, as a solo founder, yeah, it's been hard trying to pick up the pieces after that. It's actually funny because the pandemic caused me to found my business, and I just think that as long as I'm creating different shots at being successful each year, it's almost like a soccer game. You have a striker, right? A famous striker, Messi, Ronaldo, or Ronaldinho, et cetera, right? There's only a limited amount of opportunities that they get per game to score a goal, right? And to get the ball in the net past the goalie. And so that's kind of how I look at every year, right? As long as I have a few key shots every year, I would say on average I'm generating about 2 to 3 shots. And then at some point you're going to be able to extend those wins and make it more consistent. So now you're getting 5 opportunities a year, 10 opportunities a year, and you want to try to make it into at least a weekly opportunity. That's my goal here. So there will be a time to scale and ramp up, but for right now, the opportunities are few and far between, and that's okay. That's my job to solve that and figure that out, and that's why I started my company, to generate those companies first for ourselves, myself as an individual, the LLC itself, and then my first few kind of like customers or clients, and then finally try to reach the masses as a whole, to fix that issue as far as the immediate incomes. And then lastly, this little snippet here, we had the effects of the rise in money supply, all right, that were amplified from the Great Financial Crisis of 2008, and more recently by the pandemic in 2020. And then around 20% of all U.S. dollars that have ever existed in the money supply, about $3.4 trillion were created in 2020 alone, right? And yeah, that was just an insane stat. People have said for a long time that, oh, we can't have universal health care, we can't pay teachers more, we can't pay for this and that, we can't clear out people's student debt and things like that. But we have a lot of money that the government spends, and again, just sipping at the bottom, we haven't even talked about 2025 and the trillions, okay, literally trillions that have been spent, trillions that can't be accounted for in defense and things like that. It's just a matter of priorities, different family programs, like extended maternal leave, and things like that. So kind of investing in women. The economy has been held back by trillions by not investing in families, which is the cornerstone of any economy, and then also investing in women as well, and being there for them in those early stages of their life, making that part easier so that they can then get back to work. Things like childcare programs, etc. But yeah, we just have to get our priorities straight here in the United States. So I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but yeah, our goal here is to stay with consumer finance and just kind of understand how important consumer finance is to the U.S. economy. Okay, and to reinforce that point, or all those points mostly made in the last slide, you can clearly see it here. So the Fed was created in 12, 13, and pretty much, the U.S. was probably, it wasn't even the best economy in the world at that time, and it was already pretty powerful. Just over 100 years into existence, even after a big civil war, with hundreds of thousands of people dying, but I mean, we did Reconstruction. Obviously there was like slavery. I guess slavery had kind of come to an end, but there were still like de facto laws, even with disenfranchising and the loss of like basically free labor and everything. The economy was still kind of ticking up, and it really had the whole entire world kind of looking at us, especially Britain, which their empire had downsized. France, their empire had downsized. And so everyone's like, "Whoa, what are they really doing over there?" They were just 13 little colonies, and now the entire that entire part of the North American continent, they really have their act together. And you can even see here, I mean, the 1930s, even through the Great Depression, it's really just been a downward track. Man, just so much purchasing power lost, right? I think they said something like on this reference here, like $1 today would buy, um, let's see, yeah, okay, here it is at the bottom. So yeah, what buys $1? So in 1913, so this is the year the Fed were created. 30 Hershey bars, chocolate bars, but that would be in 1913. But today, or you could even say in 2020, right, which is where his graphic kind of goes up to until 2021. I mean, I could say it probably wouldn't buy a cup of coffee, just one cup of coffee. So yeah, you're definitely getting less bang for your buck here, and it's just because there's been so many dollars just put into existence, and it dilutes the value of all the other dollars. So without trying to get into any kind of economist rant here, I just wanted to reinforce that point that we just keep creating debt and debt and debt and more debt, and it can become a huge problem in the distant future for now. So we got to stop robbing our kids' future and grandkids' future in order to satisfy ourselves today. All right, so still just setting the stage here around the problem, right, so that we can get to some solutions later on. Why is this problem, why is solving this problem important, right? Well, the American economy has like really grown, right? So, you can say, okay, in the 1800s, we had like slave labor, right? We fought the Civil War, we reconstructed everything, and now we were like more like a manufacturing, hub, right? We were producing all the coal, all the steel mills, and all the train tracks and everything, right? I mean, we were just, that was like the Industrial Revolution, right? So we were just innovating ourselves into becoming a big economy. But fast forward, through the Great Depression era, through the 1940s and 50s with like Ford and all these like great companies, General Motors. We can work at the company for 30, 40 years, right? All the manufacturing was done in the United States, but it's not the 1950s anymore, right? Um, this is on top of like funding wars and things like that, Korean War, Vietnam War. So America just basically became addicted to war and government spending. Kind of made that like super duper possible, especially going off the gold standard in '71 with President Nixon. right? So now we're not even attached to gold anymore. So you can basically just print money into infinity, and that's what the last graphic kind of showed, right? So we transitioned away from manufacturing and then into services though. So our economy basically became more complex, where things like Silicon Valley and Wall Street and Hollywood, different type of niche things that only kind of happen here in the U.S. Now we're talking about manufacturing AR chips, maybe not on the level of like the Taiwanese, but to be at least competitive in that market, right? Different things like electric vehicles, right? I think the Chinese, they make more cars and sell more cars and do better, right? But people are very they're just kind of wary of Chinese technology, right? With like spying and them tracking you and things like that, right? So they have that problem to fix for themselves. Maybe no one wants the cars, right? So what other market can you what other complex market can you buy that has quality cars, right? And maybe the Europeans are working on something, but it really is basically the U.S. pretty much. And I know Tesla's done a lot of damage to itself, in its branding, probably this year, but there are other cars that are coming out as well. I think Ford has the Mach-E truck. They also have the F-150 that's electric. Hummer has a EV that's electric, like SUV EV that's electric, right? So I think it's the HEV. So yeah, so so there are different brands that are also just still trying to manufacture and compete, and I don't know how things are going with the tariffs, but that's just a whole other issue. And then so with that being said, we transitioned and we entered the service and gig economy. So pull this graphic in, we can see that about 12 trillion or 13 trillion of the 19 trillion dollars spent on services. It added a lot of value to the economy. So we just have a lot of just cool things that exist here. Netflix, Amazon, and obviously these things have expanded over to like Europe and other different markets. Different social media that's not firewalled or like cracked down on by the government. And so it really just allows for these big platforms, Snapchat, Pinterest. People do photography on there. That's a whole career. All this stuff really kind of blew up, and Facebook is probably the biggest example. It really kind of blew up after 2008, which was another crisis that we already mentioned, and it's just added a ton of value in the economy, for the people that obviously own those platforms, but maybe a little bit of value coming to some of the people who actually know how to use those platforms and monetize them. I would say YouTube right now is probably the biggest the biggest platform. I think Google earned something like $26.5 billion or something like that to their balance sheet or whatever, in just like one quarter. Just from YouTube, right? And they still don't have enough creators, so maybe I need to get on there and start to create some content for my business as well. Something that's coming down the pipeline. But then you have to ask yourself, what comes next? Are we declining, or is there an incline coming? So there's a theory that Western civilization, it's hard being number one and being on the top all the time. you know, um, so is there a decline? Right, the richer are richer than they've ever been. So there's no decline for them. But what is going to pull out, that 98, 99% of people from just living that everyday life and, just putting a little bit more money in their pocket? Can we find a way to get them to reduce their spending, cut back a little bit, or can they become more skilled with AI and just make more money? Right. So this is a hypothetical question to be answered later. All right, and so we covered some data points that we discovered. Oh, the American economy, yes, it's very complex, it's very big and beautiful, of course, but then there are also drawbacks to that. It looks like everyone's doing well. It looks like Americans are rich. It looks like they work hard. It looks like they earn a lot of money. It looks like they spend a lot of money, right? But the bad news is definitely here, and we have debt, more debts. So the total household debt increased to about 18 trillion. Just this in the second quarter of this year alone. That is from April, May, and June. So that's tracked during that time, and it's only below about 1 trillion below the all-time high, which happened again during the Great Financial Crisis. Right. So we're approaching debt levels that we've seen before, and that got the country in trouble. Through banks and just crazy lending practices and things like that. Maybe the economy has become more complex, like I mentioned in the last slide, but are people able to still monetize those platforms enough to get themselves out of like a heavy amount of consumer debt, and just generate have many types of income that come their way, and provide for their household? I mean, the answer is really no. I have the credit cards here on the screen. I think the average I just saw a YouTube video. The average debt per household is somewhere around $30,000. And you have people that are working like 2 or 3 jobs just to pay off debt. Got a car, got a house, got student loans, got health bills, got childcare, got everything is just the prices have really exploded for everything. Yeah, and and it's tough enough on just like a couple. We're talking about a whole household. We're not talking about like individuals who are also just like getting crushed, by these higher interest rates and things like that. So There's a lesson to it. I mean, you really have to like learn to live below your means, for sure. And that's a part of our mission. So we'll talk about that later for sure. All right, so we have been the bearer of bad news, but I mean, it's not all doomsday, right? I don't want to be Mr. Doomsday on here, and so let's propose a solution, right? And I would say just do a little bit better together, okay? And I think there are a couple ways we can actually, solve these issues. So number one, partner with another life partner with similar goals in order to duplicate income sources. So there's a new term out there called DINK, dual income, no kids, right? DINK, right? Where you have young couples, that need to, or just young people in general, they need to get out, 20s, 30s. Everyone's trying to like be isolated in their lifestyle and just live their whole life through a screen. But what that does is, you just limit your opportunities, to live a better lifestyle, right? You're not meeting people. You're not meeting people with like income sources or life goals, which leaves you as an individual. So you only have the resources and materials of just one person, the brain power of just one person, and you're very limited with that. Not saying that you guys have to be, if you meet someone, you have to be totally aligned, right? They have their craft and their hobbies. You have your craft and your hobbies, right? But when you put the two together and you have those conversations at night over dinner or something like that. Hey, what do you see yourself in 5 years? Would you like to, own property in Florida? Would you like to own property in California? Would you like to own property in Italy? Whatever, right? Whatever you two decide, right? Now you're totally aligned and you're making sure that everything we do, every step that we do towards that, you're managing your risk and you're making sure that those goals actually become reality, right? So next, and then you want to use an app or service to monitor progress. Just make sure that the goals are being met. So we just talked about that as well. Have a material way to track your goals, and it needs to be something that both people can see and monitor, and just make sure that we're being very diligent and very focused on how we get to those goals, and the time frame needs to match up on how we get to those goals as well, right? And then just embrace AI as an ally, not an enemy, right? So AI, I mean, I think it's projected to take somewhere around 300 million jobs. They're saying in the next about 18 months to 2 years. So literally by 2027. And I think it's a worldwide figure. So it's not just the U.S. or North America, but that's a lot of jobs. And a lot of jobs that are going to be replaced for sure. And people are going to have to find different. Again, you're going to have to create and innovate. It's almost like a renaissance. Almost, you have to find new ways. Okay, if AI it's replacing what I'm doing. Okay, then what can I really do that AI cannot do, right? Or better yet, how can I use AI, right, to become a force multiplier for what I am doing, right? So for Nitrous, for example, we now, yes, I'm still like a manual trader, right, and I have a manual override for every decision that I make in the markets, right? But at some point, I want to build a trader robot, right, that basically has my trading principles and style coded into to an automated system. I'll have to work with some developers to develop this, and then at some point we want to latch that onto some type of like futures platform or something like that, and we want to see if we can build this into an automated system. I have a partner already who already has one. He has his price a little bit high. Maybe I can just kind of figure out what he's doing, and I can become an affiliate for him, and we can actually like I can become a limited partner for him, and we can actually make a bunch of profit together. So that would be really really cool to see that. Maybe I can work for him. You never know, right? You never know. It's just you have to again. It's kind of like number one as well. AI can kind of be that partner that you partner with in order to get to your financial goals faster. It's an ally, not an enemy. And then lastly, use YouTube and other educational resources to find new ways to generate income, right? So take a hint. The average millionaire has 7 different forms of income producing gains for them at all times, even while they sleep, right? So if you think about like a musician, right, for example, right, they have their recording deal, they have a publishing deal, they have all the money that they make on tour is theirs as well. All the merchandise that they sell is theirs as well, right? That's like already like 4 different incomes, right? Let's say they take a good chunk of their income and invest it in the stock market, right? Now they're doing good with that, right? Let's say they take another part of their income and invest in I mean you've heard like Nas for example, he invested in the Ring doorbell, right? That thing blew off, just blew like crazy, right? To the point where he doesn't even really have to make music. Like he didn't have to make music in 2016, but he was the highest earning rapper that year. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't release. I think he had like one single that year. That's it. So that's what I'm saying. Like he did that. He really did that. Okay, and he's done a couple other ones as well. And then lastly, like number 7. I mean, you've heard like Jay-Z, right? He's got like a sports managing company. He's got the Rockefeller clothing brand. He's got so much stuff. He's like 5 different careers, while the average person only has one or even like 0, because most people are like there's like 25% of the economy that's basically unemployed, right? And that's a real stat. So that's why they have those careers and they have all those hallmarks and they earn all that income off of their brain and their name, their brand and their name, and they just know how to monetize their fans over and over and over again to the point where you know yeah, it makes them a millionaire. So if the average person needs to have that mindset of a millionaire first in order to start thinking like them, and then that way you'll end up with. I'm not saying everyone's going to become a millionaire, obviously not, right? But can you get close, right? Can you get to 250,000? Like I don't know, like earnings or assets under management, right? Then you can invest that, right, and then just kind of take that upwards, right? Can you do that? Okay. All right, so we have a quick breakdown here in comparison of some of the competitors that are what I think they're doing is I think they're helping U.S. consumers get through life just a little bit better, right? So my favorite is Chime. I love Chime. Chime is a great product. I actually want to create like a similar product. Actually, if I really could, they're just a lifesaver company. So they started off as a different kind of platform. I believe somewhere in like 2011, I think 2013. So they really haven't even been around that long. And so, I mean, their size right now is just incredible with their IPO this year, getting into the stock market. They're massive now, and it's easy to see why they're probably the best brand, on here, and I just love how they help people get through life every day, So they offer, the checking and savings accounts with no minimum fees or monthly fees. They probably could make a huge amount of money on that if they did that, but then they would also lose their branding, right? They offer secure, credit card building that helps build credit scores, right, which gives them, people more access to just be a participant in the capital society, capitalistic society. But you just have to watch out, with the credit, using the credit, right? Just don't use it if you don't need it, right? Pretty much gives users access to early direct deposit, right, up to 2 days early. So I like that a lot. I'm a veteran. I get my disability check, earlier than expected. So it's really, really cool. I'm pretty sure there are a couple other banks that offer that as well, but it's just good to have it just come through with Chime, and they make it available, and they let you know right on the spot. And then the last one, Spot Me, it's an overdraft feature that protects users from negative fees or negative balances without fees. So they'll let you go over, I think it's like $30 under or something like that, and you just kind of pay it back with your direct deposit the next time, and it covers itself, and then they let you kind of use that feature again, and they don't charge any fees for it. Right? It's a lifesaver, man. I mean, you've ever been on your last like $40 for like gas or $40 for food or something like that? It's a game changer. So super super like love Chime. Right? If I could create a similar service, like that, not to even be a rival, but just to help more people have access. So they would access their platform and my platform. Not saying I would imitate them or copy them or anything, but I would definitely try, to. I just love their mission and I love their approach, how they do things. So, yeah, they're really just a shining example in here. Moneyline is it's a platform that specializes in providing fast short-term loans to people with limited credit options. Yeah, so this one has been a little tricky. They were helping a lot of people, and they were great. I think they've already been acquired by a different company, I think Gen Digital. We'll see that on the next page. And but they were charging a lot of high fees and a lot of high interest rates and making a lot of money on that, right? I mean, so they were basically doing the opposite of what Chime was doing. Chime is looking at how many users can they get on their platform, right? Probably low income users, right, that need the platform, or lower income, right? Whereas Moneyline was kind of really taking any and everyone that would go into the platform, and they would just charge them the high fees and rates that they probably deservedly they thought was like fair for the loans that they were giving, right? So they were giving 200, 250, $300, making these small loans available, and yeah, the fees were high. I've used it before. Fees were high, interest rates were high, and they were able to monetize that, and they had a proven business model to get themselves acquired. So I don't know if that was like the overall goal for them overall, but I mean it worked. They got acquired for nearly $1 billion, and we'll see that. We'll see that. I'm pretty sure their income was a lot more than that. Maybe in the realm of like $2 or $3 billion, right? And then lastly, Empower. So this one is it's more like a traditional bank. So this one it's like your more conservative option. But it is a good app. I feel like it's a much bigger company, like just a much bigger bank, banking system behind it. So the rates are going to be good, but they're more selective with the users, right? They're not just taking anyone and everyone. Um, let's see, and I think they just the management. It just seems like they know what they're doing as far as just not taking a huge risk. They understand that the rates are high. They understand that you know kind of like the days of cheap money are over, even though it seems like we're going backwards now on the latest Fed announcement, right? So they're trying to get things under control, but there's really just too much debt. So the goal is to just preserve your balance sheet and just make sure that you are make sure that you're not taking too much risk out there, because there will be a drawback or a big drawdown, and then everyone's going to be looking to them during the next crisis or whatever, and they're going to have the money to buy a lot of companies for 5 cents on the dollar or whatever, just like Warren Buffett did during the Great Financial Crisis. All these big banks were in trouble, and guess what? They were blowing up his phone and calling him saying, "Hey, Warren, Mr. Buffett, can you bail us out?" And he was getting basement bargain prices, like Bank of America and things like that, and he basically saved the U.S. economy essentially. They kept calling him for advice and stuff like that, and he's like, "Yeah, I can help, but you got to give me a sweet deal." And I'm pretty sure he's still holding on to a lot of those shares, and that's why Berkshire is Berkshire, right? So it's really really awesome how he's really managed the company over many many years. So these are my top three right here, along with Berkshire, and yeah, if I could get even 1% of any of their success, like I would be super proud of my venture for sure. Okay, so I mentioned the size, these, potential competitors, because let's be honest, I'm not on the radar, for any of these guys. They're doing great work. But Chime, I mean, as of market close, Friday, August 22nd, which is today. Yeah, I mean, they just crossed the 10 billion mark, 10 billion, right? So 999 million plus one, times 10, and they even have another like 300 million on there, right? So that's their market cap. It's huge, man. It's a giant, I would say, maybe I don't know, somewhere it had to be somewhere like post pandemic, I guess, when a lot of people got laid off and all these like pay as you go and pay now, buy now, pay later options, stuff like Klarna and stuff like Sezzle and things like that. All those like just platforms just exploded. But I think Chime really has done it the best, including Moneyline as well, right? Chime has really done it the best though. I think we talked about Moneyline being acquired by Gen Digital. So yeah, they were acquired for about $1 billion, and they're still working to integrate AI into like things like ID protection, accessing your account with certain like passkeys and things like that, just to make everything more safe and secure. I think they may have, they got like some blowback or feedback legally, I guess, for like the high fees they were charging. So that's like the knock on them. But I mean, overall, again, if your credit profile is straight, I mean, I would still use them just in a pinch though, right? Like don't use them and take out a $500 short term loan, a small loan to go buy a PS5 or whatever, like whatever the heck, or some season tickets to whatever. Like, don't do that, right? And then now you're basically turning yourself into a debt slave, and you're basically forced to stay at your job. God forbid you lose your job, right? And you just look at your monthly like statement from your bank, and man, it's just going through this payment and that payment and this payment and that payment, and that's just not a good thing to see. Pay this stuff off, and then just be more responsible. Cut back to spending. You don't really need this next clothing line or whatever the hell people like to spend on, right? And then lastly, Empower, yeah, so they administer about $1.5 trillion in assets to about 20 million individuals. And yeah, so like I said, they're definitely the biggest player here. But I've seen their commercials, which it costs millions of dollars to make a commercial. And I think again, I can get behind any platform that is just trying to help everyday people. So you don't see every bank trying to do that, and that's why I kind of have Empire on here. Okay, so now it's my turn. And we did talk about some really big companies, but I mean, there are even bigger companies, right? We have, I mean, BlackRock, Vanguard, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, right? I mean, the the assets that they have, man, it's really just it's into the hundreds of trillions probably. And Berkshire Hathaway is another one, right? And so there's just no way to really, I mean, Heritage, et cetera. There's just no way to just really quantify what they're doing, especially at my level, right? There's no reason to even look at them, right? They're just so big, right? But our answer here, getting back to Nitrous, can we break it to the market with a niche? And I would, I stand firm and say yes, right? Number one, we can do that by continuing our mission to increase financial literacy around several key sectors that are delivering the most yield and most rewards, right, to investors. For example, financial technology, decentralized finance, real world assets, and then obviously you can't forget AI, right? I mean, I'm not here to take over the market. I'm not here to redo the market. I'm not here to spend all my money and try to clash with one of these giants, right? Which is a losing proposition. You're going to fail, right? I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. I'm just here to be a guide, or some type of limelight, to show people, kind of flash the light and say, hey, here, this can be a path for you to kind of get out of the job economy, just over broke economy, gig economy, whatever. And this is something that you can actually do to either supplement and then eventually fully replace your economy, your actual income. I would say probably replace the income, but if they want to just supplant or not supplant, but supplement the income, you can do that as well, right? You have a lot of households where maybe one person works and then one person works from home, right? So you can set up a couple screens and do your work from home, but still have this going on in the background, and that's it, you know. So it's almost like duplicating yourself, and that's why I like it, right? It's another way to duplicate yourself, but it can be managed by one person. Okay, so we'll get into that formula called the F2 formula, and then secondly, we can develop a solid MVP and use an AI funnel, right, or a funnel made by AI to demonstrate the success to users online, and then just write a short form or a poll and ask for their feedback, right? All of that can be done on YouTube. All of that, we submitted a short form this week, right? I only got one response, but that's fine. But you can continue polling users and understand, hey, did you understand what you saw today? Everything that you saw today. Do you have any questions? Was the content too hard to understand? Did I go too fast? If you have any questions, reach out to us by email, or if you have any questions, write them here, right? To this like mailbox, right? And we'll try to respond as quickly as we can, right? So there's plenty of ways to engage with users, but where are these users, right? Here we go. We have to gain a trusted following online and manage our socials effectively. Okay. And I pulled this research. On average, people spend about 143 minutes, about 2 hours and 23 minutes on social media every day. That's about 2.5 hours per day, scrolling through different platforms, probably mainly YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, right? As the biggest offenders. And then you have teenagers that are the biggest users, especially teenage girls, spend nearly 3 hours a day on social media, right? And I get it, like social media, not everybody's there just to like show off and show their games and show what they got, whatever, right? It can be business, done on social media, right? I think the business people are there maybe less than an hour, maybe 30 minutes to an hour max, or they're there under 30 minutes and they're delegating that, which is what I would do, delegate that, someone to manage that content to a professional, right? And I can get back to running my business, right? So we want to engage with these users. If you're going to spend, I would probably, it's probably honestly higher than this. I would say the 3 hour number is probably correct for a lot of people. So 3 out of 24, you divide that down, right? It's like seven. The remaining hours is like 7 out of 8, pretty much, right? Which is about somewhere around 15 to 16%, of your day, right? But it can be as high as probably 20% of the day, right? And that's just, it's really ridiculous to even say that. But if you can just engage with those users, and this is literally every single day they're on these platforms scrolling, they're gonna click, what you got on there, and they're gonna find out, okay, what's up with this? Is this real or not? And so we want to be there, right there. You kind of have to go where the fish are, and that's where we want to meet them and give them our offer, right? Show them our MVP, show them our funnel, connect with them, email with them, talk with them. I'll answer my phone in any time of the day to take questions, and then let's personally engage with them, educate them, and then just give them the offer and see if they would pay for our product or service or both. All right, so we talked about how we're going to get our users, engage our users. I know my process it's not going to move as fast as probably the entrepreneur and innovation platform, program would want me to move, right? Unfortunately, it does take resources to get the business kind of back on the the yellow brick road or back on the train tracks, if you want to put it like that, right? So just kind of just realign ourselves and just kind of make sure that we have a way to get to our users and just kind of keep ourselves alive here under some pretty crazy market conditions. And that's what we're going to talk about here. So what is the end game or the big goal here? Is it to match or merge or both? And yeah, the biggest takeaway is that yes, the other companies are super freakishly, high liquid giants, that made it, and I hope one day I can say that, it's probably in the distant future, next, I would probably say at this point, we're talking like 2028, 2029, or maybe even 2030. But you never know. I mean, a lot can change in a year. And that's why I created, I chose to work in this sector. A lot can happen in a year, and so you never want to sell yourself too short by just limiting yourself to a year. But I mean, a hard 6 months or hard 1 year calendar can really change the whole, time frame for the whole company. Really, we just have to just get on a run, where we can start just making those base hits, and then put ourselves in position for a grand slam. So we only wish to become a new entrant by showing people a new revenue stream that has only recently become available since 2022. December of 2022, actually, and we just want to show people how to perfect the strategy with help from AI, right? So the pivot, I started the company before 2022 without knowing, and that was my problem, without knowing what was going to be the key driver for my company. And I guess, even now, almost 3 years later, having not been able to perfect that or not investing in the tools to help me perfect my trading strategy, that's kind of, and then of course some personal troubles on top of that. It's kind of been a little bit of a whirlwind, man. It really has. And so, we're dealing with these forces, these market forces. The buying power of the customer has gone down, right? I think the value of the dollar has dropped already 10%, in 2025 alone. I can't even keep track of how much debt has been created over and will be created over the next few years here. Supply is not really an issue. We'll go over that. The threat of substitute products, yeah. I mean, we're not the only AI trading company out there, now. So I wish I would have had some things go right, maybe even 4 years ago or even 2 years ago, and I could have been on the cutting edge, of some of these products, and I would claim my rightful share of the market share, but I'm just not there yet, and that's okay, and that's led to more rivals, and then you still have just newer players coming into the fintech industry, right? So maybe the cake or the pie is big enough for everyone to eat. We'll have to see that. I'm hoping that can be a part of the equation. But we want to get into this kind of break into this industry any way that we can, and I think that we can still do it. All right, so we had the assignment for this week, right? Kind of wrapping up the study. So we've laid the setting for the problems that we're trying to solve. Why is it important to solve? Who's actually solving them? Who actually cares to solve the problem, right? With consumer spending, and different ways to help consumers get through their everyday life, but also help them earn more money, right? And that's kind of where I'm coming in. Yeah, getting through life every day is fine, but really, yes, cutting back to spending would probably be ideal, right? But if you're going to spend, at least spend on something that can generate a return for you and help make you money. And it doesn't. It's a one-time return, one-time expenditure, and you just don't have to, you don't have to worry about it. And at some point, again, it's going to supplement your primary income, which is probably a job, just a linear income, and then give it 4 to 6 months to work out, and then the back half of the 6 months, it will probably replace your entire income, right? So, but just looking at the feasibility study as a whole, right? Talk about the market. It's definitely a tough one to crack. I mean, we've already talked about some of the market forces this year. Tariffs, trade deals. Basically the tariffs acts as the tax. That steals purchasing power away from potential consumers and clients and customers, right? So it's a tough one to crack. We need some of this stuff to kind of wear off. If you look at the American economy, it's like a big bulldog, right? Maybe it can just kind of shake things off and just keep on trucking along. So I think that things are not going to crash until they will crash, and it's up to us to kind of sideline some assets and be ready to just get in at that bottom price. And I think that we really could do that. I hate to say that, or make a fortune off of other people's misfortune, but yeah, I mean that's really how it happened. In '99, 92, 87, obviously 2008, right? That was a really really big one that really made a lot of people rich. Even in 2020, right? Just a small crash like COVID. Again, things rebounded. The government stepped in, things rebounded, and so this next one, is a slick. Markets, they happen in cycles, and so we're just kind of like due for like one of those, and luckily I just have the skills to take advantage of it. Hopefully, so it's a tough market for sure. Competition is very stout, right? Also tough, and I put almost impossible. In my mind, I don't believe that, but I think I do have a slight niche to exploit with some overlapping services that I can just lower the cost for, and that will be attractive to future clients, right? So you can offer the same services and just become like a lower cost player, right? And that will, maybe the clients they will end up using both services, right? And that's going to give them a lot more buying power, and it gives them a lot more buying power to make better decisions, but also it also gets us in the market too. Okay, supply is not really an issue. This is a business to customer B2C software as a service, right? That I can offer, so I can sell to anybody, anytime, any place. Doesn't matter. I can teach anyone anytime, any place. Super easy to deliver. I've had customers in Florida, California. I'm based out of DC. Yeah, so I've talked to people in New York, talked to people overseas, London, Berlin, etc. So it really doesn't matter. India, etc. And then operations. So like I said, limited for now, kind of tying into number one. There's a lot of market forces out there that are putting a lot of pressure on people and a lot of pressure on startup ventures, small businesses, etc. Right. So we've had to pull back some things this year. Took some risk, didn't work out. So I just want to preserve my liquidity and just kind of make sure that we're protecting ourselves. I'm actually getting ready. It's actually funny. Now an opportunity has kind of opened up here, and next week, we're just gonna just take another bite at the apple and see what we can do here in the back nine. The last few months here of 2025. I mean, we have Labor Day coming up here, and then it's really all downhill from there. So I'm hoping to be able to create just at least one more golden opportunity by the end of the year, with Palantir actually. So I'll kind of give that away. Just had a big drop, and so I hope that it goes back up, and we can make quite a bit of capital off of that, and then parlay that into our key driver for the company, into our F2 formula, and then hopefully by New Year's, and I would say the springtime next year, yeah, we should be in a pretty good spot. Once some of these like market forces kind of wear off. Um, so operations limited for now, but definitely will be back up for sure in late 2025, and then definitely into 2026. And then the finances, yeah, the lifeline for all startups. Currently, I'm bootstrapping the venture, right, through my own equity and savings, but obviously it's not the best position to be in because you're just one person with one person's resources and one person's income behind it. Um, we have a few, all right, private clients that pay for our services, but it's not anything noteworthy, and it doesn't make the business profitable for now. And so that's our goal. You want to get to this crazy cash burning startup, right, kind of business, and you want to get to a real venture that has real customers that makes real money, right? And we're going to talk about that. So overall score for feasibility, we're talking about a 6.75 to 6.8, somewhere around there, or you just round it to 7. Definitely not the easiest venture for sure, but I don't think it should be easy. I think if it's anything worth having, if it was too easy, right, everyone would do it, right, and then nobody would make money. And if it's too hard, then you're beating your head against a wall, right? You're going up against Apple and Google or Microsoft or whatever, and you're going to fail anyway, right? So it should be in the middle, right? It should any startup that should succeed and that there is a true market for it, right? It should be about a 7 or 7.5, something like that. Okay, and obviously you're looking up at all these giant titans that we talked about, and yeah, it's an uphill battle, but Google was a small person, right? A small entity, right? Apple was in a garage at one point, right? Ford was in a garage at one point. Um, like Netflix, they were looking at Blockbuster for a while, and I think they got approached to buy them or something like that, and the Netflix people walked out of the room and laughed at the Blockbuster people because they didn't understand streaming, they didn't understand private content, and having a platform that ran on a cloud server, right? That could be delivered to everybody instead of just DVDs and VHS tapes, right? And so, yeah, man. I mean, everyone was small at some point, but you have to truly know what your advantage is and what your niche is, and then you can branch out further later on to more conservative markets and just you can become a buyout target. You can you can definitely expand. So it's our goal to prove that niche first, and then we can expand to more traditional services. All right, so this little quick study we're going to do really kind of rapidly, right, to kind of close out the presentation. Sorry for being so long-winded here, but yes, this is page 45 and 46 of the book called The Successful Business Plan, Secrets and Strategies by Ms. Rhonda Abrams. All right, so we completed this, and this pretty much served as the kind of overall kind of core thesis for this entire presentation, actually. So I just kind of saved it to the end, but we can kind of roll through some of the questions. So um, how economically healthy is your business or industry? So or is your business industry or sector? So very healthy. I mean, you see, we've already talked through another or some other examples, right? Chime, Moneyline, and I would say Empower, but there are so many other different platforms. Albert, Dave, right? I mean, there are so many out there that. So I just covered like a small snapshot of what the industry looks like, and all those companies, to my knowledge, man, I mean, they're really doing well, right? So we just want to be another one of them. That's it, right? And help consumers out as best we can. Um, so you want to explain the next question? You want to explain how your industry sector is sensitive to economic fluctuations? So yes, we are very, we talked about a little bit of that. Obviously these like tariffs and like trade wars, things like that. It's it's very sensitive to the markets because consumers have to have confidence that they can go out and spend their money. When they don't have confidence, they save, and then that slows the economy down. And now we're looking at like a crash, or some type of recession type of situation. So very sensitive. And then the next question was, are the forecasts for your industry sector positive? What about your product or service? And so I would say yes. Again, we talked about just the forecasts for like different things like AI or financial technology, which is still in the top three, or even different things like real estate, and just trying to tackle the problem around like affordable housing, building new like dorms and things like that, or different like hostels, or just I don't know, just trying to find a cheap solution where to kind of clean up that issue and kind of reduce the housing shortage. Right, I think there's a 40 million home shortage right here in the U.S. Right, and that you have a short supply, which boosts demand, right, and that also boosts the price. If everybody wants it, then everybody is paying. The sellers can sell at the top of the market because everybody wants it, right? So it just goes to the highest bidder, and now there will be a bidder that comes through and pays that price, right? So you can charge the highest price and you're still going to be a buyer, right, for that home, even at crazy interest rates. Um, Yeah. So the next one is your product or service viable? I would say yes. It's my job to prove that. Can it be developed in a reasonable period of time? Yes. So even though I have been in the sector for 5 years, we've done a couple different pivots, and every different pivot, I want to try to give myself at least a year, 6 months to a year to prove the concept. And I'm the one that's been inconsistent and kind of growing personally, right? Still a young, just 32-year-old founder, right? So no, I'm not going to be a millionaire this year, right? Which is the average age of a self-founded uh, or self-made millionaire, right? That's not going to happen, right? But maybe next year, you never know, right? So I want to give myself that 12-month period. I would say 12 to 18 months. So hopefully by the end of 2026, we're looking at, I would have completed this program, and then we're looking at a successful venture like coming right after that, right? Are the costs of development prohibitive? No. So that's why we got into this program to become a more lean startup. And I realized how wasteful I was in the past. I acknowledge that. And so we want to be a lean startup, and we want to make sure that we can produce our funnel and our AI and kind of reach customers, with very limited amount of funds. Show them that you can do this from you know, a very reasonable cost that where that barrier to entry is like very, very low. Okay. And then, yeah, that's when I intrigue their interest. I'm like, are you serious? This could really happen, So that's what we want to show them, that it's very, very possible, but you have to be open to new ways of producing income. And then are the necessary supply and support systems established already? Yes. So supply is not really kind of like a factor here. We'll see that. Is your market clearly identifiable? Yes. So, this has been kind of a topic in the class. Some people say I overpromise and underdeliver, but I think really, there's articles out there, people, under 30, like 50% can barely, hit adult goals and like really like afford life without some type of subsidy or parental help, right? So you have the 18 to 30 crowd that really need the help, just the young couples, young people, right, getting through college, X, Y, and Z. You have the middle-aged folks, which includes me. So I would say 30 to 32, all the way up to I would say is probably as far as like maybe 55. I would consider that like late middle age. These are people that they should be into their careers and they should have the money to keep investing and keep working. They should be getting into management. They should be, earning, probably the most money that they will in their career. And, I would say, but definitely on the back end of that, 45, 50, 50 55. I mean, you're trying to look at retirement, in like 20 years, right? And then that's the next group. Like you want to really prepare yourself for that. And then the next group, I would say anywhere from 56 to probably somewhere like, 76. There are people even that late in the game, they're still looking for solutions, right? And so at that point, I mean, I would be willing to try something. And you're telling me I have a year timeline to change things around and live, a decent life toward the end of my life. I would be willing to try probably anything. So I still want to cater to those groups as well. So very, very identifiable. I would probably go for the younger group first. Um, so the 18 to 32, 30 to 32 range, somewhere around there. I feel like they are probably the most ambitious, and they're probably the most open to solutions. You start looking at older folks, and they're used to things a certain way. Maybe they're not, they won't be as open. And look, I'm not here to take the whole market, right? Nobody gets 100% of the market share, right? So, hey, you have to find the customers that are for you, and that probably will come from that group. Just being honest. So, is your market large enough to support your business? Absolutely. So demographically, millennials are pretty much most people under 40, millennials and Gen Z now, right? Yeah, they're probably two of the larger demographics, in the country, right? And that's proven by the last election here, right? Based on population, we should be doing a census here pretty soon or something like that. I heard from like political channels, right? So, those are, again, it's probably most of my clients will probably come from that group, the 18 to 30, 32, somewhere around there. Is your market too large? And is it cost prohibitive? So, the costs are pretty low. I only kind of wanted to deal with just certain key aspects of the market where the costs are always low, but the ceiling of the profits is always high, and that is going to create a big credit and a big profit margin, and then you take that savings and you put that into hard assets, houses, gold, silver, whatever, just other different properties, and now you let that stuff rise in price, but you want to continue to use the formula to generate and supplement the other incomes that you have, and then continue to turn it into hard assets or real assets or whatever is out there that you want, right? That has value and that will retain its value, not lose value, right? We're not talking about cars and watches and things like that. No, all right. Real stuff here. Okay. So is your market growing, shrinking, or remaining stable? It's growing. It's growing. So it's growing. We've covered that in this presentation. Is the market ready? It's been ready. I've kind of known I was going to always do this probably since I was a teenager. So I mean, we're talking at least 15 years ago. And obviously, I joined the army, and I thought I was going to be a good soldier. Then that didn't work out. Thought I was going to be, or it did work out, but had to move on. thought I was going to be like this like corporate ladder guy and work my way up. That that didn't work out, right? And so now I'm just in it to win it for myself and for the real customers that are there. So the market has always been ready, but I need to be ready though. I need to be ready to enter that market, and that's been the hang up, right? So it's literally me versus me at this point. Um, let's see, is your product or service too new for customers? It is. It is. It's a new product. It's actually been around for quite a bit actually, but it's recently become available, and so that's why a lot of people don't know about it. And it's actually there's actually quite a fair bit of risk with it, right? So where there's risk, there is reward, right? And so if you're savvy enough to mitigate those risks and supervise what you're doing, right, and you have enough experience to do it, or you have someone that is experienced to guide you doing it, and you're learning and you're winning at the same time, which is my goal for them. You don't have to wait to win. You can learn and win, learn and earn at the same time, right? And then you're going to realize, oh, okay, this is why it works, right? Now it's their job to figure out which days in the market will it work and will it not work, right? And that's where. So I'm basically going to try to condense my experience, my 5 years of experience, into 1 year for them, right? And then that's a skill that they can teach, in their family, and that's a skill that they can teach, future generations, as long as things remain economically stable here in the U.S. All right. So hopefully, it's new now, right? But I'm hoping in the next 3 to 5 years, it's not going to be new. It's not going to be new, and I might even have competitors trying to do the same thing. Okay. And in fact, I actually know one or two already. Um, let's see. Do you have to be strong? Do you have strong loyal customers, or do customers have strong loyalty to existing companies? They do. They do. I mean, I'm a Chime user myself. I've used Moneyline before. I think I've used Empower before. I mean, so as a new entrant, that's your worry, right? That they're going to be kind of like attached to other brands, right? If you're a smartphone maker, right? People have been stuck to Apple and Samsung for the longest time, right? So how would you? And it's actually funny because I don't use either one of those phones. Like to date, I don't use either one. Um, yeah. So, but I know a lot of people that do, right? People swear up and down about iPhones, right? So the branding does matter, and it's the consistency that they can deliver, which makes their customers, it makes them strong, it makes them loyal, and it makes them willing to pay, a certain price tag, for that consistency that they delivered over the last 15 to 20 years, and even before that with the computers. So yeah, you're gonna have to start winning them over. Maybe lower your costs, to try to win. Try to come in as like a low cost, alternative, and then that way you'll get some fans who are like, oh man, look at this thing works. I barely have to pay for it, and it helps me get through. Like maybe I should tell other people about it. And so that's how you're going to try to undercut the market and try to win over some fans. Um, let's see, is it costly for customers to convert your product or service? No. So, or actually, I put yes. Yeah, like I said, I'm not looking for every customer out there. Eventually I will, but at the beginning, I just want, you want your first 5, you want your first 10, your first 20 converts, in the B2C world, right? I mean, man, if I could get to 20 conversions, right, with a 60-day, like trial, right? So you literally get 2 months free from me, right? You're already making money, and then by that time, you're like whatever your monthly subscription would be. I'm still working on like either is it gonna be $3.99, $4.99, $5.99, probably like $4.99. I would say somewhere around there per month, right? That would be somewhere around like a day or two of income for them, And so I'm only asking for that little bit of return, and I've already given you 2 months free, right? I got that business model from Shopify. They actually give, I think it's like 3 years free, or 3 years at like a 76% reduced rate or something like that. Yeah, I got it from them, and they just offered a huge discount, man. And then they want you to get your business on there, selling to customers. There's other different ways to like drive traffic to a Shopify store with the products on there, and then now you just pay a little fee, and you kind of own the platform a little bit, like, and you're just making money. Your whole business is on there, and you have repeat customers, and they're strong and they're loyal, and they keep coming back, right? So it's costly in the beginning, but I kind of, again, I give away 2 months free. I reduce the cost, then I ease them into the cost, and then at some point I will make like a pilot program for them where yeah, I feel like I can either try to cut the cost down even more, so lower that barrier even more, so that more people can participate. But no, I'm not looking for every customer, because sometimes you just have premium items and premium products and premium services that belong to premium customers. So um, let's see, does your product service integrate easily with existing products or services? So right now, no, but I mean, it kind of does. It kind of does, because you can run the formula on any, like, pretty much any trading broker that offers options trading. So it kind of does. But I feel like I have a specific I would say like broker that I would refer people to, that does really really well. So they're going to be the ones to kind of handle most of our business, and they will have to, the platform is like really simple, user friendly, easy to use. So it's easy. It makes the conversions just a lot easier. So it doesn't need to integrate with existing products, but the products are there that I need, that are already existing, and they can handle those customers, and they probably want those new customers. So I've done it already, and so I just need to do it all over again, and successfully this time. All right, so then we're gonna look at the competition. So how formidable is the competition? So very solid. But I feel like I can bring a more personal approach and I can beat them. So at least for my first 5 to 10 converts. So again, I mean, you're talking about a $4.99, price after two free months. Just even 10 conversions from that. I mean, you're already talking about a $5,000, so times 10, $500. You're talking about a $5,000 monthly revenue rate, monthly rate of revenue. Okay, times 12. Yeah, that's already $60,000, in net revenue, and really most of the business is already built out. Okay, which I've already, kind of invested in, unfortunately. So I kind of spent the money to build out the business, and still need to spend more. But it's going to be good to see that income coming in once I can get those first 10 or 15 or 20 conversions. But then we're already making money together. So I don't want it to be like a free service, of course not. I do want to have real clients and real revenue, of course. I want to have, the 100 raving fans or 200 or 1,000 or whatever, and we can count it up. It'll be great. But really, I mean, this business, it won't be once I can get out of this initial startup phase, it won't be so cash intensive. And I can really start to focus on other markets. I can monetize the YouTube channel. I can teach people about just other things and other types of deals that I'm working on. So it's tough now, but it could easily get better in 6 months, in a year, if I can execute properly. And yeah, next week we begin that journey again. So let's see. Do one or two competitors dominate the market? Yes. So I mean, for me right now, the two scariest ones, I would probably say Chime, and I would probably say, I don't know. I mean, even we're kind of like even just going up against like credit cards. I mean, like Visa, Mastercard. I mean, but you have to have like you have to qualify for those though. With us, you don't, right? So, or with Chime, you don't, right? So I don't think we're necessarily, when I label the competitors, or are we're like a supplement to the market, right? So that's what I said. We can fit in there. It's on me to prove that. And then it's the market share widely distributed, making it easier to get a foothold. No, no. So if I actually do get a foothold in here, it's going to be a little bit of a miracle. We'll have to see. I'll have to work that, with my own capital and my own kind of desire to push it forward. Maybe AI can help with that and make some better decisions for me. Is there a competitor with deep pockets who can drive you out? Absolutely, there are tons. And then what barriers to market entry will your future competitors face? I'm not sure. I mean, if there's anyone on my level, I mean, there are market entries, like points of market entry that are really, just really big, really high. I mean, you're in this like financial technology sector where, if you don't have any capital, you don't have any finances, you just don't have a company, and so it's hard to get the funding for most companies. And so that's kind of where, I think it's like the top three reasons: no market need, ran out of money, or like the founders didn't get along, right? Those are the top three reasons why a startup dies, or it goes out of business, right? So, you don't want to run out of resources, and you don't want to build something that no one wants to buy. So if I end up getting to a point where if I just get no hits on my service, right? Okay, then I'll just pivot to taking my assets that I have, right? And okay, we can teach people about. It probably will be more like an educational company, and then I'll just start doing my own deals. Okay, I couldn't prove it to other people that it worked, but I became successful myself, right? And people will see that, right? So then they're like, well, dude, how are you buying this house, or how are you buying, like what is your operation, like what's really under the hood, right? Why are you able to do this, right? Like you're not online, you're not, like what are you doing, to be able to be in this position? And then that's when it piques their interest, and then that's when I can bring them in and show them what I'm really doing, right? Okay, so we're gonna move to the supply and distributor program, or question here. So yeah, like I said, it's not really relevant. It's a SaaS, for sure. My goal is to go from B2C, so business to customer, to B2B, so we can try to help other startups and other small businesses, right, invest in this and then supplement their income, right? And they're going to have the $10,000 and $25,000, which makes $1 million in 6 to 8 months or something like that, right? And so when they see that, they're gonna be like, "What the hell? Like, where have you been? Like my whole life, right? They're going to have that kind of capital to really throw down, and then yeah, I just keep in touch. Those are probably going to be some like more high end customers. So I can't wait to to really start working with them. The terms will look a little bit different with them, but it just won't take me long to work with people that also have capital, right? And it's going to be more of a short shot as well. That you're not trading desperately to make money every day, because the business is more stable. They have other revenues that they can tap, and so it's just a way more fluid an easy situation with pivoting to B2B. So I can't wait to be at that point. That's going to be like oh my gosh, I can't believe it. We're on our way to like rockstar status, and then now you have other businesses. We're getting 5-star reviews on podium and thrive and things like that. And yes, it's just going to be that. That would be the moment where it's just almost like the what do you call it, the point of no return. Yeah, once you start getting the businesses like having successful venture and you're returning hard assets to them with their wealth. Yeah, that's pretty much the game over point right there. We're never going to look back ever again. And now you're talking about, okay, what's a reasonable valuation for this company? They're helping companies reach 1 million, 4 million, whatever, or 1 million, 2 million, 4 million, liquidity and things like that. Okay, and you manage that. Okay, well, can you help us manage this? And so I have different clients and different levels and things like that. Yeah, that'll be a pretty different like conversation to have. And honestly, I mean, who's to say I can't get there in 2 years? Maybe it's the marketing and the kind of like the brand recognition that holds me up. But I will walk into these companies and say, hey, or just be in touch with startups online. Hey, what do you have going on here? What's your financial situation? I will poke and prod with them and try to get them to to throw down with us and see if we can help them or save them, not only from a financial standpoint, but I mean, I'm literally building a startup here, right, and going to school for it and trying to finish it, right. Maybe I can point them in the right direction, operationally as well, right. But definitely, the finances is the key, right. It's the lifeline to any company, so we have to have that right before they run out of resources and then the whole thing dies, right. So that's not good, right. Okay, and then yeah, how reliable are suppliers? So just again, not relevant. Are you dependent on one or two suppliers? No. And then are suppliers in distro well established and dependable? Yes. So I mean, I kind of am my own supplier, right? So I'm the generator, creator, and supplier, right? And the brokers are always there. They're always liquid. They're always ready to work, with new accounts and things like that. So it's just it's all me. Everything, all the infrastructure is right there for me to take advantage of, and I just need to be ready to do that. We're going to talk about operations. So there's your business entail unusually difficult operational problems. So not really. The last few years here have been more like a personal problem. Um, yeah, I mean, it's been some boom and bust, and it's been some like just needing to find the right tools. Yeah, like just so once I can perfect this for myself, converting the other people, 5, 10, 20 people, man, and now you're talking about 60,000, 100,000, 120,000, annual win rate. I mean, it's just going to be too easy to do. And even if I never get those customers, right? Okay, I still have a liquid business that I can convert to hard assets, and now, okay, you're planning real estate, you're playing in, other, just other markets that, other startups, right? I can invest in other startups myself. Well, who is this guy? He's a random guy. Like, we don't even know who you are, right? Don't worry about that. I'm here to just try to see if I can get in on this a small piece of the pie. That's it. 0.5%, 1%, whatever. That will do for me, and then watch it blow up. And now you're talking about not even working anymore. I mean, there are people that out there that bought 1% of Airbnb or 1% of Booking.com or 1%. Come on, man. Those people are. I mean, they just have those shares and they're sitting on them, and it's awesome. It's super duper awesome to just be in that kind of position. And I'm still do my own operations, but there's no pressure at that point because it's backed by a liquid founder, and that's the best position to be in. So I can do that and kind of take myself up, and then still reach the customers in other ways after that, just through other businesses. Let's see. Must you make a substantial initial capital expenditure? So yes, I already did that part. I put in 25,000 to my own business. Submit my articles of information. I'm the only officer, and yeah, it worked out. It worked out really well. I'm proud of it. It still stands. It still has a little bit of lifeblood to go. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a real business. It's on me to grow it though, and to continue to bootstrap it and make sure it stays alive. So, will you need to maintain large, expensive inventories? No, that's not. We're a digital SaaS, right? So no. Does new technology exist that will help you reduce costs? So yes. I think at some point, I could honestly see this happening. Maybe like the end of next summer. So literally around that 1 year timeline where, yeah, we're going to end up dropping about 30, anywhere from 30 to 40,000. If I don't have any customers by the end of next summer, then I'm just going to build out the trading robot and then just lease that out. Right. And so I'm literally showing you data books of Excel, winning. Didn't make a trade today. Okay. Kept the account clean, winning. Right. Didn't make a trade today. Kept the account clean. Right. I can show you all my data. And you're just telling me like, oh, you won't bite on it. So if you're just going to refuse the opportunity altogether, right? Okay, then we actually call that poor. So passing over opportunities repeatedly. Okay, so you can stay poor, that's fine, right? And then I just continue to show that data to the people who are interested in it, and that trading robot is going to win for me, and all I have to do is just make my coffee and just look at the screen, right, and make sure that yeah, I have a manual override on it, but if it performs the way that I developed it to perform, it's going to be a beautiful thing to see. So the customers, like I said, I'm not here to take every customer. I think that's impossible anyway. I'm looking for premium customers who want to supplement their income and then eventually replace their income. And if I could do that, I don't know, even just for like 2 people or 5 people or 10 people, the business behind the assets behind the business are going to be liquid no matter what. That's the goal, right? So, but to reach customers, and actually turn it into a business. I'm not saying that it's optional or anything. I do want to have Raven fans and customers, but if it has to go automated in order for people to buy into it, then I'm willing to do that. So, yeah, so it can, it'll take an investment to get there for sure, but I'm willing to run, if I've already kind of invested this much, right? Some cost fallacy. Yeah, if I've already invested this much and I have to take that extra step to get automated to actually win and win online, then you might as well do that. And then that'll reduce the cost for not only myself, but others. I can charge them a little rental fee, per month or whatever, just out of the gate at that point. Because I need to return the income back to the business. And then it's going to prove itself as a winner, over 6 months, a year, 2 years of data or whatever. And then, yeah, once I know I have a winner, it's a wrap. Just kind of show it to the whole world and let's start winning, in the markets, for you. So, and then are you sure you can secure the necessary insurance? So insurance, or will you have to carry huge premiums? Insurance. I mean, every business has to have insurance, of course. I think more so in the financial sector, it will be more like licensing for me. And so, yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to spend another, couple tens of thousands on that too, in order to become, I believe they call it a RIA, so retirement investment advisor. Yes. So yeah. So but honestly, I can see AI kind of taking that industry away, right? So, or basically downsizing the industry, right? And so that's what I'm saying. AI is going to come through, man. It's a big wrecking ball, and these little nerd kids, like myself, right, and the developers that are going to help me, we're coming, and we're going to take that a good bite out of the industry. So maybe I'm not paying them, but they actually might be paying me to share some of the technology that I have. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of plays in there. But I don't think so. I don't think I'll have to do that much licensing, or if I have to rebrand under another company or partner with them so that you talk to them, but then you work with me and everything goes legit that way. I mean, yeah, it'll have to be like a concerted effort to get to like be legit, of course, and just make sure that the customers feel comfortable engaging with me and my product in a legal way, of course, before we start making income for them. So that's I want to make sure that they feel comfortable in everything that they do and all the agreements that they sign before they start working with us, right? And then, do you anticipate any financial problems? So, is your overhead high, putting extra cash on extra pressure on the cash flow? So, no, virtually no overhead, right? Like I haven't made investments, but that's the goal. I always wanted to have a company with low overhead and high profits. We talked about this, making for some pretty good profit margins, and just you never want to have like too many costs. Like it's just not a good business to have like construction or yeah, just you're just kind of asking for something that just happened wrong and now you can't pay your workers and checks are bouncing and things like that. It's just not a good place to be. Will credit be hard to establish? I don't think so. I think I've actually heard that you can just buy other businesses that have a good profile and then kind of max leverage them. So it might be hard for me to establish it, especially at this point. But I can just again just buy into another business, just take a 51% equity stake, and then literally just max out their profile and then take that equity. And because I'm the parent company, I can kind of do what I want and then just return it or keep it or whatever. So there's a way around that for sure. And then are their profit margins narrow, which makes the business vulnerable. So we just went over that too. So you want to have the highest profit margins as possible. Like keep your costs low and your profit high, of course. So and it even says it in the question, right? Is the business vulnerable, right? And so if your profit margins are so thin, that's why people were like worried about Amazon, for like a number of years. Let's say 2008, maybe 2005 to like 2015, Amazon was like this like paper thin, profit company, like barely profitable. And now guess what? They sell everything, and it's like extremely profitable now, and it's just ridiculous, right? And so it took them 10 years, to be a paper thin, profitable company, like barely profitable, or even like Tesla, for example, right? I think Tesla's like they're just now getting cash flow, free cash flow positive, and it's kind of been around for quite a while, right? 16, 17, 15 years, something like that. So it takes a while to get there, but I wanted to start a company that had that free cash flow and profitability from the jump. I just didn't want to run a business with high costs. It's like one of the best ways to like fail, pretty much. Will you have to carry a large amount of debt? No, we shouldn't have to, right? The company should be liquid, and then we should be flipping that liquidity into most of that liquidity, or I would say not most, but a good portion, let's say 60%, into hard assets. That can still also be sold, as well, right? But you want to have a diversified portfolio always, right, in order to handle certain emergencies and things like that. And then we're also still we still have a revenue producing, service and product as well. So do the principals have, next question, do the principals have the expertise necessary? So yeah, so me as the only officer, that's kind of been my knock here the last 2 years, right? Ever since I discovered what I discovered, right? I've been trying to pilot and find the right platform and the tools and and the necessarily know-how and expertise, right, to prove to not only myself but also others that I can do this. And it's to be determined. I think I have the expertise, yes, but I have to demonstrate that expertise, right? It's not going to be known that you know what you know until you can demonstrate that on the battlefield, right, in the markets, right. So and then you have to create these opportunities every single year, in order to or generate enough of them until you hit once, and then now I can prove that and show that on a live stream or YouTube or Twitch or whatever. I can show that, and people are like, oh wow, oh my gosh, and they're going to see how relaxed it is and how easy it is, right? And then that's when the calls are going to start coming. That's when the business is going to start coming. Yeah. Right. So will ongoing training be required? Absolutely. So we only have to be in the markets for 6 hours, like maybe 4 to 5 hours, but maximum 6 a day, and that's okay. Maybe like 9:30 or what is it, like 10 to 4? So 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I actually do some front end work, but then yeah, I'm open for questions. I probably would just do like a live Q&A, right? Like a little market recap every day, 30 minutes to an hour every day, right? Just to understand why the market is where it is. Let's talk about it. Obviously I'm not a licensed individual or anything like that, but I can bring on a licensed individual, and then he can kind of break some things down, right? XYZ. So he's licensed, he looks good, right? He's breaking everything down, and I'm like, yeah, that's the way I understood it too. Does anyone have any questions about that, right? So I will be doing a little Q&A after probably every market day, just because I'm like so passionate and so crazy about this company and so crazy about financial markets and how they work. So I just once you get into it, and especially your live streaming and things like that, it's going to be a love fest, all over again, and you're kind of falling in love with what you do. If we don't make a trade that day, then I will actually start the live stream early, like at like 10:30 or 11. So yeah, probably about 10:30, and then I'll just jump on there early and just say, hey, this is why we didn't make a trade today, blah blah blah, and then bring my comrade on or whatever, and show we can talk about it. Hey, yeah, the market's like super duper red and bloody, and everyone's like selling their cat and their dog, whatever, blah blah blah, And so I can definitely see myself doing that for sure. So, but yeah, the ongoing training is for sure because it's like a classic phrase. Oh, this time is different, and this time it could be different, but also there's a lot of market history out there that shows, hey, when we have an inverted curve rate or yield rate or whatever, or when this happens, there's always a recession, right? There's a lot of history might not be exactly the same, but sometimes it can rhyme, right? And so we want to, we're going to be going through that. Hey, in 1964 this happened, in 1987 this happened, blah blah blah, right? So that's going to be like on YouTube, and that'll also be monetized, and then we'll have a couple of viewers in there, but it's really about generating the content to show the crowd that I know what I know, and just generate the content and just own the content. So that would be like the training platform, and I can have a separate training platform that's not YouTube, right? It's more private, and just take one-on-one calls after that, right? Late into the evening, 5, 6, 7, 8 p.m., right? However long I want to be out there. And then will it be costly to retain additional experts, or is the industry rapidly changing? I think yeah, we talked about bringing the expert on, right? Because I'm not a licensed individual. Maybe I'll become licensed one day, but I think it's just a partnership, honestly. Like it's gonna be like a meet and greet kind of thing, right? So hey, there are a lot of like podcasts and shows and things like that where I'm sure they pay the visitor, the special guest, right, a certain amount to be on that show, right? That's kind of what I would be doing, except just in financial terms, essentially, right? So a licensed individual comes on, right? I'll say, hey, I'll pay you $250 per show, right? And you're just on there literally for 30 minutes or an hour, because you don't want to make those shows too long-winded. Yeah, so you're making $250 an hour to show up and just answer like a few questions in literally, literal, legit, technical terms, right? And then you just kind of break down and talk about it, right? And that's it, like so in 1 hour, you get paid literally the same day, right? And you're just paying them for that one little meet and greet. There's almost like a meet and greet for the little, for our customers and clients, right? So I think that's really cool. They can talk to with a real expert, and that's why I want to have them included. So I don't think that would be costly. And then is the market changing? Yeah, I mean AI is coming. It's impacting almost nearly every market. So that's what I said. You need to make AI your ally and not an enemy, right? You may not like. I mean, even if AI doesn't right take your job or it doesn't defeat you totally, right? Or maybe it can't do everything that you can do. But this will get you though. Someone using AI will beat you, right? Because they actually have probably the same or more education, the same or more experience, the same or more, connections and networks and things like that. And they're using AI, right, to leverage and they're leveraging all of that and putting all the language into the learning module, right, and making it basically as smart as them and you combined, essentially, and then leveraging that in the market to take market share. So that's the big problem, like with AI. Like you have a lot of smart people behind the AI, right? So it's not really the AI itself. It's the people behind it that make it that and what they plan to do with it. That's what is the burner right there. That's what's going to make you lose, pretty much. So I can't wait to be one of those people. I think it's a fascinating thing, and it makes the market more competitive. And yeah, just be the best user with AI win. So, and then last question here: are there rapid technological changes that will affect cost and competitiveness? Yes, we just went over that. So yeah, so we just went over that. So and then we have this last little quote here in the chapter 28. If you're truly creating something new, it doesn't show up in trends, or it doesn't show up in trends, right? And this is by Mr. Larry here, and it's true. Like I don't think that what I'm doing is necessarily new. Um, I think that the way that I'm going to present it and the way that I'm going to come off, and then just my little ways, like you can already see it through these questions, the ways that I've already kind of drafted, and I have it written down in a business plan, right, to get around certain hurdles, and just like your craftiness and your savviness, in the industry, right, and that comes with time. It comes with seeing other people and their experiences and how knowing financial history and knowing how things went down, and understanding that you can still build a business, right. I trust me, I have no prospects, right, limited financial capital, limited network, limited connections, limited credit or credit history, right? Um, like limited, I don't know, probably potential at this point, right? Limited profile online, right? Limited connections to funding and things like that, right? And yet, and still, I mean, so that's what I said. All that stuff. I mean, there's no way I should even be, in the running for trying to build this company, but I believe that I can, and so I mean to prove that, and that's why I went back to school, and I've already learned enough. I mean, the Lean Startup book by itself is probably worth to me, it's worth like $1 to $2 million per book, right? But obviously, you can't sell a book on Amazon for $1 to $2 million. The book is a gold mine, really. But yeah, I've already learned so much that it's going to transform my business. Later this year, going into next year. So I'll be happy with the results, and I'm more than eager to show that to the world. Can't wait. Okay, here, folks. So if you're still with us, right? Finally, the conclusion. We've reached it. And I just wrote this little statement here. You know, it's not the easiest venture to start for sure. For Nitrous Holdings LLC. I've been at the venture for 5 years. And I have probably maybe limited progress to show for it, but that's okay because things can change in a year. Mr. Steve Blank, he says that the goal is not to stay a startup, but to turn the venture into a real company with real clients and real revenue streams overall, right? He's totally right. I've been wasteful, I've been delusional, I've been wishful, in my thinking, and in my thinking process. Um, I've been in and out of the operations for years, very little to show for it. And I never wanted to waste, any dollars, let alone the amount that I've wasted to date, just to buy a 24/7 job or a hobby that does not make real income. That's not the goal. The goal was to make my venture, lean, and or the goal is now, right, to make my venture lean. We'll do a relaunch and begin to engage with new customers that will pay for my services by the end of the program, which will be sometime next summer for me. I think I could be very very much into either just getting my first customers between now and then, or if I don't have customers by then okay, I'm just going to keep building out products. I'll be liquid enough to build out certain products that customers will eventually want. Okay, and so at some point or another they have to give. And or they can just keep attending the classes and just keep watching. You're literally going to keep watching someone make income every single day. And I don't know how you can watch that and then be like, man, I don't want to be a part of that. That's crazy. No way, right? So, I just said that here, right? If no one wants the product, then I can pivot to AI generated products that the customers will want and just charge more for those items as needed, right? With the 60-day trial period before the first charge. So, so I'm giving the value away for free at first, and then just charging you a small bit on the back end. I mean, anything that it takes to convert these customers until the brand becomes very, very strong, then I won't have to give out any discounts. It'll just go away. Yeah, we can build out the business for sure. It'll start off B2C, and then we'll definitely pivot B2B. For sure. So it won't even necessarily be about individuals. It can be, because obviously I still want to help people, but you can do both, right? There are a lot of companies that do both, and that's the best way to do it. You don't want to lose your crowd, your customers, your raving fans online, but then in the background you're also helping like businesses with their finances. You're saving them, right? That could be. I mean, it's not like an under the table thing, but it's just something I won't talk about, but I'll definitely be actively doing behind closed doors, right? So for sure. Um, let's see. I've yet to see an offer like mine, and I probably never will. Right? People they want to get paid for their product right up front. But I've already seen different founders. I'll have to create the market, and then you just want to give the value first. So give value, and then ask for the payment, and that's what I'm going to do. So thank you so much for sticking with me on this one. This one was really, really tough. I understand why. This is kind of like not my forte, but we got through it, so thank you so much for staying with us. And yeah, this is a big presentation here, but yeah, we had to really kind of lay out for this one, so in order to get over it. So thank you so much, and thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Sorry for being too long on this one, and I'll see you on the next one.